This video is about doing applique on your sewing machine. Non-embroidery hoop technique using pin or blanket stitch. We will be talking about threads, needles, stabilizers, and techniques to make your appliques beautiful. So what's new, everyone? I'm Susan Anderson, and welcome to Susan So Creative, where it's only wrong if it doesn't work. Today's help video is all about appliques on your sewing machine. Let's get started. When doing applique on your regular sewing machine, there's some basic supplies that you're going to need. Let's go over the supply list. First off, your pattern. You're going to want to have a pencil for tracing. You're going to want to have a fusible product like heat and bond to go to the back of your fabric to fuse it if you're doing a fusible applique, which we are. You're going to want to have some fusible tearaway for your base fabric for when you're doing your stitching. You're going to want to have thread for stitching with. I have a choice of threads here for you. I have, first off, this is Invisifil from Wonder Thread. I like this one. It's 100 weight, very, very fine. You could use a monofilament thread as well. This is Superior's. This is called Micro Quilter. It's also 100 weight. This one comes in colors. You can use embroidery thread if you prefer. So any of those threads are good to use for your applique. Now this is for the actual stitching part. Besides that, you're going to want to have, of course, a variety of fabrics. These can be scraps. I just pulled up a charm pack that I wasn't doing anything with. Thought this looked like fun, so I'm going to be using those fabrics. For your machine, you're going to want to use anti-glue embroidery needle. Those are available for Schmetz or Oregon. I'm sure that your Janome dealer has these in stock for you. If not, they can order them. I'm going to be using my applique foot from Janome. This is for my 9mm machine. You want to make sure you have the correct one for your machine. And let's get started on doing our applique. First things first, we're going to want to check out our pattern. We've got to get our fabric set up first. This applique pattern already has the templates reversed and they are printed to scale. If your pattern is not reversed and you want to do a fusible applique, you have two choices. One you can do is take the pattern to the copier, run off a sheet of the pattern. You can therefore flip it over and use your light box to trace the design to the wrong side, making it reversed. Then you can take your heat and bond or choice fusible, lay it over on top, and trace the designs onto that. You could also, if it works, all right, not everything comes out nice and clear, but if it works, you may be able to skip that previous step of tracing it to the paper and just trace it directly to the heat and bond. That's one method. You can also, if you can see through it, turn that back on, lay the fabric on top of your pattern and trace it directly to your fabric. In this case, you would want to make sure that you used a heavy starch, and it doesn't matter what brand, but a heavy starch, and starch your fabric before tracing. The reason being is that means the tracing lines from your pencil will not be on the fabric, it'll be traced directly onto the spray starch, meaning that you will not have the lines left after you're done. That will simply be washed out. Since I already have my pattern reversed, I was able to trace everything directly to my heat and bond. Now, I'm ready to go ahead and apply it to my fabric. For instance, this is going to be the little dress of my pattern. Let's pull that up. There we go. And you can see she's got her hat here, and she's got her dress down here, and then her tips of her slippers are also the same fabric. So I pulled up this really kind of fun print. Thought this would be fun to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just press this flat first, getting it warm. And then I've cut out, or rough cut, my individual pattern pieces. In fact, I'm going to cut some more of that extra stuff off. I don't want to cut right on the line yet because I want the fusible to go all the way to the edge of my piece. So what I'm going to do is just cut a rough cut of the designs. There's her hat. Here is her little sock implements. These little pieces, I guess they're socks. They're trimmed to with slippers, I guess is what they are. Trimmed to the slippers. Okay. And then the last thing I want, I know I traced it. It's here somewhere. I want the bottom of her dress. So I've got that to laid out. Okay, I'm ready to go ahead and fuse these little pieces into play. And you want to make sure, since this is a directional pattern, I'm going to make sure I have the direction all going the correct way or same way that I have the others. In fact, let's switch that around. Put that down there. This in the middle. There we go. Now I know I've got the direction the same way on the print. Follow the directions on the package for fusing. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and just cut these out. Now I'm going to do this for every piece of my applique pattern. By building this a little piece at a time, I can assure myself a perfect alignment. So since I can't see through all the pieces that are up here on this particular part of the applique, I'm going to just work with the very top part of it that'll go on last. Now I've got all those three pieces fused together. I can now position, in this case, the one that goes underneath that I'd already done the top for that. I can still see where this little bit of this bottom part of the design is going to go. So that helps me align all of those pieces as well. So the only thing I have to do here, however, is this is where it gets tricky. This goes here, and then this goes on top. So the actual way to do this is to remove this, get this positioned correctly with the design element. There we go. And then position this so that it lines up. And now my piece that's going to attach will be just the, in this case it's a nose. I'm just going to attach that right there. And I've continued to build my applique. See how that's going to work? So now we're ready to put the hat underneath. Got that aligned. Now I do have some hands over here. So there's some little tiny pieces that still have to go in here. And they're completely on the outside. So those can actually go down very last. But what might be nice to do is, just like I did with the glasses, it might be a good idea to go ahead and get these little hands done I think that's what I'm going to do next. I'll go ahead and take the paper off the back of those, position the hands, and then fuse these into place and continue to build my applique. Now that I've got my entire piece fused together, I'm ready to remove it from my pressing sheet, my applique pressing sheet. Let's get this out of the way, and put it onto the background. What I like about doing it this way is I'm not trying to juggle the background at the same time I'm trying to juggle my piece. And this is easily pulled off the sheet. Oops, I didn't quite get that one leg. Ah, she lost a leg. Get that tacked down. There we go. Now we got her all in one piece. So she comes off all in one piece like that. My applique is ready to go, and I can position her onto my background. Now I've already gone ahead and done my fusible tearaway to the back of my block. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with her yet. I just really think she's kind of fun. And I'm going to go ahead and just fuse her directly onto this panel. And then I'll go, let's turn it this way instead. Yeah. And then I can trim the background down to make it into a bag or a pillow or just a wall hanging, whatever. Anyway, so I've got my little my little quilter here, and we're just going to fuse her back to the background now. But that way everything is fused in place, it's all aligned, and I'm ready to take it to the sewing machine. I've gone ahead and set up my machine. So that you know what my setup is, I do have a pre-wound bobbin. A pre-wound bobbin in my machine. I've got an anti-glue needle. This is a 7511 anti-glue needle. And I have my machine threaded with the micro quilter 100 weight sewing thread. I could go ahead and sew using the applique stitches in the ordinary sewing category. I have found, though, I like this next step a little bit better. Touch home, go to my sewing application mode, touch stitch, and select applique. I'm going to choose applique, actually I'm going to choose blanket stitch number 1. That's the preferred one I want because it's almost invisible. I've got my stitch width at 2 and my stitch length at 1.5. Now there are a couple more features in this section that you don't get in the standard applique stitches. One of them is the cornering option and the pivot. I know you get the pivot, but you don't get the cornering option. What that cornering option does is it gives me a new icon for my start and stop. We're going to zoom in a little bit on that so you can see it. A new icon up here. So when I get to a corner, I'm going to touch that. Now it doesn't have to be a 90-degree corner. It can be any shape or any time you want to pivot or turn a corner. Now I'm going to go back over to my machine and I'm going to lower my needle down to where I'm on the outside edge. I don't know if you can see that or not. Outside edge of my design element. This is where the stitching is going to start. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and go right around the corner here like so. It's going to lock the stitch to begin with. Jumps over, comes back, and ends into the background fabric. I'm now going to pivot just a little bit. I don't have to touch my corner yet, but when I go into this, if you notice, because I've got that pivot feature on, I can rotate that fabric whenever I want, as long as I'm in the background fabric. Now if I'm not sure where I'm going, because I've got a lot of really tight stitches on this one, if I'm not sure where it's going to be stitching, I can go back and touch my corner. What that will do for me is restart the stitch back at the beginning, and it won't make a knot. This is what's different as opposed to going it with just regular stitch and using your applique stitches without that corner feature on this machine, okay? Without that corner feature, every time I restart, it's going to give me a lock stitch at the beginning of the design, which I don't want, because that's going to give me an added lump to doing my stitching. So this eliminates that at the corner and starts it over. The big thing on this, or when you're going to engage that option, is whenever you're going to be at a point where you need to turn and you're not sure where you are. Just make sure that you are always in the background fabric before you touch it. Now we'll just continue stitching around. You could use your F or F2 foot with this. The reason I went to the applique foot is because it is a shorter foot, and therefore it's not going to give me as much problem when I'm trying to turn a corner. Now when you're turning a curve, it's a little different. If you notice, I'm stopping every stitch or so going around, and that's how you do it. You continue going straight. Don't try to turn the fabric while you're sewing. Sew straight for as long as you can, and then when you can't, pivot the fabric. So you're actually making all these little bitty straight stitches, but it appears when you're done that it's all curves. And you can see here, when we go back, I've got all these nice little curves, but I sewed very straight across them. You can see here when I get into a curve, I'm going to do needle down in the background fabric, pivot my fabric, and then press the start again icon at the top of the screen in order to make sure that I've got that next one's going to be coming forward before it jumps. So even though these are all straight stitches, I'm not curving the fabric while I'm sewing. I'm stopping and pivoting every so often so I get that nice edge to my applique. When you're done with the applique, all you're going to do is just remove the tearaway from the back. To do this successfully without breaking the stitching, hold your finger right on the stitching and pull against your finger, not against the stitching, and just work it all the way around the entire applique. That way you won't damage the applique. The applique will come out real pretty. And you can see how that's pulling away very nicely. Hope you enjoyed my video and picked up some techniques on making beautiful appliques on your sewing machine. Remember to download the handout so you have the reference material on hand. Thank you for watching, and if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see on my channel, please drop me a note and I'll see if I can get it done for you. See you next time, and remember, it's only wrong if it doesn't work.